So, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision, right?
Right,
Like
absolutely.
you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor points right to the fracture. It's either broken or not broken. It's binary, it's clean, and most importantly, it's categorized.
You know what you're dealing with.
Exactly. We want the systems we interact with to be static enough that we can understand them, map them, and ultimately control them. But imagine stepping into an ecosystem that operates on the exact opposite principle.
Um,
An ecosystem that doesn't just heal its broken bones, but actively weaponizes the fracture. A landscape where, like, the X-ray machine itself would constantly rewrite its own circuitry to adapt to the radiation.
it's a terrifying concept.
It really is. So, welcome to another deep dive. Today, our mission is pretty huge. We are unpacking a massive stack of lore documents, timelines, and narratives surrounding the living, sentient planet of Yaenddarr.
A world that literally refuses to sit still.
Right. And while we've touched on this universe before, today's deep dive is laser-focused on one of the most terrifying, relentless, and endlessly fascinating species in this world, the Fera.
Yeah, the Fera are just on another level.
But we aren't stopping there. We are also going to unpack some wild new discoveries about cosmic entities, soul-restoring merfolk, and these unexpected timeline shifts that completely change everything we thought we knew.
It gets really weird really fast.
It really does.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that, could you just give everyone listening a quick overview to set the stage?
Sure. So for you listening, we are looking at an ecosystem where magic, biology, and celestial energy all kind of overlap, right?
Yeah.
Yaenddarr isn't just a backdrop. It's an active, aggressive participant in its own story. When a threat is introduced, the planet doesn't just absorb the blow, it fundamentally restructures its own natural laws to counter it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the planet of Yaenddarr, we have to first understand its apex threat, the Fera, and how they force the entire world to adapt.
Right. They are the ultimate evolutionary catalyst. But they weren't always there.
Right. This is the part that blew my mind.
Yeah, their origins are actually rooted in this catastrophic event in a region known as the Wildling Field.
So they weren't part of the original natural order.
No, not at all. The precursors to the Fera were these creatures called shadows, basically immortal, hyper-cannibalistic humanoid entities from the savage jungle.
Which is a whole problem on its own.
Exactly. But then a massive wildfire swept through the northern reaches. I mean, an inferno so devastating that it consumed everything, and the shadows got caught in the blaze.
But since the shadows are immortal, the fire couldn't just, burn them to ash and kill them.
Right. Instead, the thermal and magical destruction did something worse. It severed their shadow nature. It burned away their connection to the dark void, but kept their biological hunger completely intact.
Which is just the perfect recipe for a nightmare.
It really is. That severance is the birth of the Fera. You have the twisted remains of burned shadows pulsing in the scorched soil, seeking to fill that biological vacuum.
So the hunger becomes their defining physiological trait.
Exactly. They emerge from the wildling field as physical wildlings, pure rage and starvation given physical form.
And that biological instability is what makes them such a threat, right? Because they act as the ultimate biological mimics.
Oh, the mimicry is total.
Like, the descriptions in the lore are haunting. They have limbs that snap forward like cracked obsidian and bone jutting from their shoulders that still glows with the heat of that original wildfire.
Yeah, and they don't just hunt for calories, they hunt for biological assimilation.
Right. If they consume a glow lion, they don't just get their physical mass instantly restructures to take on that creature's explosive sprinting speed.
It's an instant DNA recoding, or, if they eat a thorn beast, they can suddenly impale targets.
And the craziest one, the one that shifts this from just a physical threat to a spatial nightmare, is the whisper bat.
Oh, yeah. That one is insane.
A Fera can consume a whisper bat and instantly adopt its echo travel ability.
Right, so you have a massive, heavy predator suddenly gaining the ability to displace its physical mass through sound waves,
It just pops up instantly behind you, completely violates physics.
which forces a brutal arms race upon the entire planet. The primary targets of the Fera were the Florians, the society of peaceful, plant-based beings in the Elysium forest.
And faced with a ground-based predator that is constantly shifting its attack vectors, the Florians did the only logical thing. They went vertical.
Right, they orchestrated this massive migration into the canopy.
They built these elaborate tree houses. They literally changed their entire culture from ground-dwelling to arboreal just to escape. And, ecologically speaking, you'd think that would work.
You'd think so, But Yaenddarr doesn't allow for escape. The moment the Florians established that canopy society, the forest signaled a shift.
The ambient noise just dropped.
Yeah. The birds went quiet. And then came the acoustic marker of adaptation, the slow, rhythmic tearing of bark. The Fera experienced a spontaneous physiological mutation. They developed highly specialized, retractable claws to scale the Elysian trees.
For you listening, it's like fighting a computer virus that patches its own vulnerabilities every time you try to delete it. The Florians built a sanctuary, and the Fera turned the trees into ladders.
Literally weaponizing their own failures.
Right. So I have to ask, how does an ecosystem survive a predator that weaponizes its own defeats?
Well, the only way to survive is to shift the paradigm of the conflict entirely. You have to look at the mechanics of their existence. And since the Fera cannot be permanently killed, we have to look at their resurrection loop.
Yes. We need to talk about elixin.
Right. So elixin is this glowing, iridescent liquid, essentially the lifeblood of the forest. It heals Florians, but for the Fera, the elixin lakes are a brutal crucible.
Because when a Fera is killed, they respawn in those lakes.
Yes, but they don't just return. When their essence hits the water, the lake actually boils from the thermal runoff of kinetic and magical energy.
And they return stronger, adapting to whatever killed them. They have this mandate, right? Return to the wildling, or die trying.
Exactly. Which brings us to the Month 5 lore. They emerge as avatars of pure fury, but they are biologically compelled to return to the wildling field.
And this creates that terrifying filtration ritual.
The rite of rage and rebirth. You have hundreds of newly reborn Fera all converging on the field, and they immediately turn on each other.
It's a closed system where rage devours rage. Only the most lethal variants survive to march back to the forest.
Right. And you have to consider the psychological toll of that cycle. Dying over and over, boiling in the lake, slaughtering your own kind.
If you run a sentient consciousness through that loop enough times, it's going to break.
And it does. The endless death loops created this collective subconscious construct of rage and abandonment. It pooled together and physically manifested as a towering specter called the Fury.
The Fury. It's essentially the physical embodiment of generational trauma.
Absolutely. It remembered every Florian tactic and countered them effortlessly. It didn't even need to mimic. It just knew mathematically how to beat them.
So you can't beat it with weapons. Every strike just feeds the cycle of violence.
Right. So the Florians did something radical. They didn't defeat the Fury with weapons. They let it kill them.
They sacrifice themselves.
Yes. 3 Florians stood before the Fury and allowed themselves to be struck down without resistance. By sacrificing themselves, their unagitated essence bound with the Elixin network.
They hacked the resurrection algorithm.
They really did. They forced the lake to filter the Fury's rage through endless rebirths, utilizing their empathic sacrifice as the filter.
And eventually, it emerges as a cleared one. Rage that learned to breathe.
What's fascinating here is how this shifts the lore from a standard monster survival story to this incredibly deep philosophical exploration of trauma and forgiveness.
It's beautiful, honestly. But the Fera's evolution into cleared ones was only possible because the prey, the Florians, fundamentally changed their own society.
Right. They went from absolute pacifists to tactical warriors.
Led by elders like Umok, they turned their serene groves into training grounds. But they couldn't just outmuscle an immortal enemy.
No, they needed structural innovation. Enter Lycaios.
Yes. Lycaios, the celestial architect. He literally crashed into the forest and brought this completely foreign variable. Celestial intuition mixed with engineering.
He didn't just fight, he built. He led the treehouse revolution we talked about.
And he didn't just chop down trees. He engineered suspension cords from living vines and used leaf glue to make observatory shells.
Working with the forest instead of against it.
Exactly. And when the Fera mutated claws, he and a tactician named Ilara built elaborate traps, bit traps, snare vines, repelling glyphs.
But again, infinite war is mathematically unsustainable. Which brings us to month 11 in the timeline, the Florian Accord.
The Accord is such a massive shift in strategy. Instead of fighting every Fera, they created these return passage constructs.
Right. These are runic, glowing corridors designed specifically to guide non-hostile post-resurrection Fera safely through Florian territory.
They built a pristine highway for their apex predators, leading them back to the wildling field for a ritual of ascension where they shed their mimic skins and find peace. So what does this all mean?
Well, it means true victory wasn't about destroying the Feras. It was about building an infrastructure for their healing. It's a system of empathy, completely replacing a system of war.
That is just incredible world building. But it also leads us to the Elixir fluid itself, because it's the key to this healing, and the sources reveal massive new discoveries about where Elixir actually comes from.
Oh, yeah. We are expanding to the cosmic level now, the ethereal star system.
We find out that two entities created the universe. Celestria, the embodiment of love and lunar energy, and Nexus, the embodiment of logic and order.
Right. And Celestria planted the primordial seed that grew into the Elysium forest.
Which tells us the true nature of Elixir. It's not just magical groundwater. It is an iridescent liquid created from Fey essence and lunar water.
It holds memory. It sings with sensory vibrations.
It's basically a fluid hard drive for consciousness.
Exactly. Which brings us to the merfolk of Cyrillus.
Yes, characters like Nereus, Alai, and Salen. They use the Elixir in these rebirthing pools.
But it's not a standard healing spell. They use acoustic magic, these highly specific glyph tones.
They use sound to remind souls that are welcome to return.
Right. They use the Elixir to stitch together emotional memories. A laugh trapped in the glade, a name remembered by a tree's roots.
For you listening, think about how poetic this is. Resurrection in Yaenddarr literally requires the consent of the soul. The universe measures your soul's integrity based on the empathic connections you made while alive.
It's a stunning framework.
But if Elixir is pure lunar creation, we have to look at its opposite, the shadows, and the shocking discovery about Alara's ability to counter them.
Right, the shadows, S-type wildlings. They are immortal, hyper-cannibalistic, and they consume prey to gain abilities while permanently erasing the biological matter.
They are absolute consumption. But then we get a massive plot twist with Alara. She goes in for a medical scan, and we find out she isn't just a regular Florian.
No, her core essence doesn't match Florian botany. She is a solar bloom.
She possesses ancient solar star potential.
Meaning she doesn't just fight the darkness, she ignites it.
Yes, she has the power to override the shadow's dark energy matrix and convert them into beings of pure light.
Reclassified as solar fae, she transforms a destructive force into a new, sustainable energy source for the fairy realm.
Which sounds like a massive win, right? You turn the monsters into batteries.
Well, this raises an important question. Does the fairy realm now rely on a supply of dark monsters just to power their society?
Oh man, the geopolitical danger of that.
Right. If you solve your energy crisis by farming your enemy, the line between defense and exploitation dissolves. Do you start artificially breeding shadows in the savage jungle just to harvest the cure?
It's such a messy systemic compromise. The world building just keeps layering these ethical dilemmas.
It really does. Everything has a cascading consequence.
Speaking of cascading consequences, we have to talk about the wild timeline of Lycaios, because this bridges the cosmic and the grounded, and it goes to some incredibly strange places.
It really requires some untangling. So Lycaios decides he needs to understand the Fera from the inside out.
Right, so he abandons the canopy, joins a pack of A-type wildlings, and actually beats their apex.
But he gets bitten during the fight.
And the venom triggers this catastrophic biological failure. He transforms into this terrifying form called Beastly.
A hybrid of starlight and feral rage. And to stabilize it, he consumes a shadow for a power boost.
He leans totally into the darkness. And you'd think the next step is some purification quest, right?
You would. But instead, the timeline violently fractures.
This is the most jarring discovery in the text. Suddenly, Lycaios gets retrograde amnesia, renames himself Jack Lobius, and we pivot entirely into Greek and Roman mythology.
It's an extreme tonal whiplash.
I mean, out of nowhere, he's fighting alongside a guy named Dante, battling mythological furies and minotaurs.
And Dante gets dragged into the underworld, so Jack and Milo have to go after him.
And ultimately, Jack takes Dante's place in the underworld, making a literal deal with Hades in Tartarus.
Yeah.
So, for everyone listening, here's where it gets really interesting. How do we reconcile this?
Right. How do we jump from sci-fi ecological world building to the Olympian pantheon?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is Yaenddarr a multiverse? A simulation? A crossroads of all mythologies?
Well, the broader lore actually supports this. The texts explicitly define the fairy realm as an interdimensional nexus point.
Oh, so it has active portals to other realities.
Right, places like the nightmare and dream realms. So when Lycaios destabilized during that beastly mutation, the energy surge likely tore a hole in the dimensional fabric.
Pulling him straight into the Greek mythological plane?
Exactly. It suggests Celestria and Nexus are just two entities sharing a massive multiversal board with other pantheons. Yaenddarr is a cosmic nexus.
That completely changes the scale of his existence. He's being subjected to maximum existential pressure across multiple realities.
It's all about relentless, uncompromising adaptation, no matter the dimension.
Which really is the perfect summary for this entire deep dive. For you listening, what we have here is a blueprint of a universe defined by constant, brutal adaptation that ultimately strives toward harmony.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the Fera finding peace through the Florian Accord, Alara turning shadow into solar light, or Lycaios navigating multiversal trials, the mandate is clear: adapt your architecture or perish.
And before we wrap up, I think there's a final thought worth mulling over for everyone
Oh,
listening.
definitely. Let's hear it.
The Fera only achieved peace because they were allowed to die, reflect, and be reborn in the Elixir waters time and time again until they finally let go of their rage.
Rage that learned to breathe.
Exactly. So think about human psychology. If you were granted an Elixir-style respawn every time you failed or got angry or lashed out, how many lifetimes would it take for you to finally step out of that water as a cleared one?
Man, that is a heavy psychological diagnostic to run on yourself, but a necessary one. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the chaos and resilience of Yaenddarr. We will catch you on the next one.